Hey, welcome to this episode of Hollywood Breaks. This week, Keith and I dive into what the heck's going on at Disney with this deal with Scarlett Johansson. Are they really just bullying her? Are they using this COVID thing as an excuse? We think that the back-end deals are legitimate, and I think that the actress has the opportunity to really defend herself here. Let's not believe all this PR stuff about her being greedy. But we also just wonder about the leadership of Hollywood and where it's going. These OTT platforms and streaming platforms have some major shifts that are taking place, or as Variety would say, a revolution with Scott Stuber. But we're really wondering where the leadership is going to come from for the next generation that can take advantage of this evolution that's happening within these platforms. So this and many more things, please stay tuned for Hollywood Breaks. It's good to have you. Keith, I miss seeing you face to face.
I know. It's been a while, Tim. Wow.
There's one of my favorite parts of the name Vision Craft Brew. It reminds me of the Liberty Bell bar that we'd go to next door to the place where we both worked
used
for a little while.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's just something that, like, those are great memories. Being outside, eating the pretzels, drinking the brew,
drinking a brew, right where the whole country was, like footsteps away from where the country was born.
That's right.
It's quite the place to have a brew. I
miss that. I think what we have to do is figure out how to watch a movie together at some point. Oh, dude, by the way, come on, son. Anybody that turned on Disney Plus in the last 7 days saw Stuntman. That's the very first slide that you saw.
Yes, you're Stuntman.
Come on.
Way to go, Tim.
And my brother,
that's awesome.
It was great. It was great. I had not seen the edit. We watched it as a family, and my brother is like, in 5 minutes of the film, at some point the stuntman needs to go get financing, and we were looking for private or I'll say brands to sponsor the launch. And my brother, who worked with the NHRA, took him to an NHRA track and introduced him to all the brands and writers and creators and that kind of stuff. So he's the bald guy introducing Eddie to all the folks at the NHR track. If you're watching the movie,
nice. Look at that. I like it.
Uncle Pat Pat made the film.
Go Uncle Pat. Good for you.
But I'll say, it was perfect placement. And if you watch the first 2 minutes of the film, you know exactly why. Because Dwayne Johnson, who's the EP of our film, obviously is also doing Jungle Book this week. So there was a 2-film promo deal going out.
Jungle Cruise.
Sorry, my bad. I totally did the faux pas, didn't I?
Ah, you did. They're gonna be mad.
Cut. Do it again.
Yeah, and scene.
But Jungle Cruise. This is the next big Disney experiment of, like, are they gonna? So what are they gonna do? Are they gonna do theatrical and online? What's the play out?
It's another premium access deal. So it'll be released in theaters. It's in theaters as we speak, and it's now available on Disney Plus for premium access. So so we're going through another one of these rigmaroles, and they have already said that they're going to announce on Sunday morning the premiere access numbers. So they're sort of setting that expectation now that when they do release a film in premium access, they will release the numbers on Sunday. So they're sort of starting to set that precedent.
But it's interesting, the same week
they're
ready for this. I mean, the last greatest experiment they did totally is backfiring.
Blew up in their face.
Johansson is suing them for doing this exact same rollout.
Yeah.
Because the back-end deal she's promised, or basically, I mean, you sign a contract with the deal, you have some expectations. The studio has an obligation to meet that expectation. They changed the game. They changed the rules. Their excuse is COVID, but we all know that the theaters are open and Disney is Disney. They can do what they want to do. Correct. Or even just pause release. Instead, she doesn't make the money she's expected, and she sues them for this exact same play that Dwayne Johnson's being stuck in. So it makes me wonder, is The Rock going to be suing Disney soon too?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think this is a result of what started with the HBO Max Warner Media disaster, where they just dumped everything on and they didn't really tell talent, and it was sort of like a disaster for them in town, both, because as we said before, this business is based on relationships, and burning bridges is not advisable. And Warner Media took a major torch to the bridges in that town with that decision. And it cost them over $200 million by some estimates to make it right with talent and sort of the back end deals, because they had very similar deals. Now, Disney apparently has not been as gracious, to put it in simple terms. Now, I don't necessarily blame them, because they are suffering from sort of the COVID, what the landscape's like, and they're experimenting, trying to find a way to get the movie in front of the most people as possible. But I think, again, contracts are pretty ironclad, and particularly in this country and in general in the industry. And from what I've read thus far, again, I don't have necessarily, information telling me otherwise. Her team was reaching out to Disney saying, hey, we need to have a conversation about this. We need to discuss this. This was not what we agreed to. Trying to do it that way. And I guess Disney was just blowing them off. And, so that's kind of where it lies. And then Disney shot back, going really hardcore at Scarlett by basically saying, listen, you've already made 20 million. Why are you doing this in the midst of this horrible pandemic, which is affecting millions of people? Really just going after her in terms of like, just with the audience, like just trying to make her look like a
that's like the
bad guy. And
way.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. I mean, listen, I'm not going to say I disagree with what Disney's doing in terms of their playing with the model and trying to figure out a way, but it's like, listen, you got to make it right. If there was an agreement, and apparently they have an email from Marvel's general counsel about, listen, we know we agreed to a theatrical release. We're going to honor that. That's not going to play well. And the other factor of this, which I think is kind of getting missed in a lot of the mainstream press, is the Kevin Feige of it all. Like, Kevin Feige has built a relationship with these actors through their 13 or whatever films. And for this to come like right on the tail end of this, when he was already wanting this to be theatrical, it sounds like he gave in and said, I get it. We got to make Disney Plus a priority. But then then this suit shows up. And if he hasn't been kept in the loop in terms of what's been happening, and Scarlett's been calling and her team's been calling and she's been ignored, and he didn't know about that, which I find highly doubtful, but maybe he was kept out of the loop. I don't know. That's also bad, because you don't want Kevin Feige, who has basically built Disney Plus, aside from Kathleen Kennedy at Lucasfilm. They don't really have much without those two brands. And I don't know if it's advisable to tick off the guy who has basically made your company into a multi-billion-dollar powerhouse. It doesn't seem like
one of the greatest entertainment brands.
Yeah, exactly.
Currently,
Currently, yes.
Here's the question I have is like, I don't want to make something out of something if it's not, but I'm just a little bit curious about the timing and the person, in that this is a female-led film. It's in the Marvel series, it's the only female. I guess Captain Marvel was
Captain Marvel, right? Yes,
but we have a female-led film, and I feel like they wouldn't necessarily do these bullying tactics with other people. Like, I don't think they're going to be bullying Dwayne Johnson and talking about how much money he made and whatever, if he's on the back end of this deal saying it didn't turn out the way I want to. So I'm a little curious about that, and only because it's the other female actresses. That's redundant. The other actresses that are coming forward,
right?
Emma Stone,
Emily
Blunt, that are making the same case of like, is there possibly a standard that they calculated into it of like, well, don't worry, we'll just make them look greedy on the back end. They'll never be able to make this deal again. It's a little concerning if that's true.
Yeah, I mean that definitely it is a little concerning that the actresses are sort of the ones that have to fight this battle. And you're right, we don't have any noise about Dwayne Johnson in terms of his unhappiness. John Krasinski made some noise about potentially going after Paramount if they didn't stick to the theatrical release, or if they didn't broaden it wide enough. But I think he was rightfully happy with how that was handled, how that went, and how it's still going, to the point where he just backed off. And Disney, Warner Media had a lot of issues too across the board, but they made it right. If you believe what Brian Lord says, and he is pretty much the grand poobah in terms of the agency side of the business, they have a lot of work to do. So clearly that didn't help. That helped, but it didn't solve the problem. Now Disney's sort of facing the same issue. And I think this goes just back to sort of the compensation model, like because take for example, when Jim Carrey got paid $20 million for The Cable Guy, I believe it was.
Cable Guy, yeah.
that was unprecedented. It was just what? And then that sort of became like, okay, that's not real reality. So here's what we'll do. We'll give you back end points. So if once the movie hits break even, then you start, there's bonuses depending on if it keeps going up. And everyone knows that studio accounting is this sort of shell game of where the money's coming from and how it's being allocated and who makes what. And they took that, everything has just continually shifted over the last few years because the studios want to try to keep more and more of the money. And as it's harder and harder to open a movies, you have to spend more and more money in the marketing to get the movie out there. That has to be shifted somewhere. And I think a lot of that has come out of the talent salaries. Now, for most of the Avengers movies, they were just making killing.
They were.
And, Robert Downey Jr.
cash.
is
so what would they have to say? Like, hey, we've made billions of dollars on these other releases. Oh, Scarlett, we didn't get it on Black Widow, so we're going to screw you out of it instead of saying, oh, look, obviously you win some, you lose some, but we owe you money. We should pay you out.
Well, I mean, you look again, it's the state that you look at the statement that they released, and it's very much sort of trying to make her look bad in the court of public opinion.
Yeah,
basically saying, how dare you do this in the midst of this pandemic? And oh, by the way, you already made 20 million salary for this movie, and now you want an additional 50. Like, what? Listen,
and
I understand that
they're basically only basing off of the Premier Access dollars. They're not basing off of the retained Disney Plus that they have 100 million of them because they have a platform that she's on. It's really like a skewed thing. I mean, SAG's going to have to get involved in this eventually, right? They're going to have to get some clarity of how this works.
Yeah, I think, and that's interesting you bring that up because SAG has an election coming up in the next month or so, I believe, for their two factions, which are their elections are always contentious. I think ours are bad for the president. You see the president of SAG, that's just like a whole nother ballgame.
Actors, come on.
But actors, exactly. But I think that's a big part of this campaign strategy. Like, what defines streaming? How is this new world order going to affect us? Because yes, we're talking about Scarlett Johansson make 20, but what about like the down the line actors who rely on this? If it's a theatrical release, does that change their comp structure? I don't really know the ins and outs of how actors get paid per se, but there's a lot of things that sort of affecting the shifting that's happening. And Disney has always, as I said previously, has always been known to toe the hard line. They've done it with the exhibitors. Now they're apparently doing it with talent. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I think it'll be settled quickly because they don't want this to draw out. Sure. Again, I've read that Kevin Feige is none too happy about this at all.
Good for him.
And Bob Chapek can't afford to lose him. I wouldn't be surprised if Toby Emmerich's calling Kevin like, hey, DC, come on over. We got an entire library of characters that you can tap. So, they have to be careful about that. And I think this is going to bring up issues with all the talent on all their movies. Now, listen, I think everybody realizes now in a negotiating position moving forward, you have to say, if there's not guaranteed theatrical, if it's going to be theatrical and streaming, this is what the compensation will be,
which is fine after the fact. But right now,
but right now,
there's a deal. Yeah, and Disney is not. Please don't cry wolf of COVID. Don't be ridiculous. They made 100 million. They got 100 million subscribers because of COVID.
Yeah,
they are not hurting, and they get paid every single month from those 100 million subscribers to get that film on their platform.
Yeah,
come on,
they're not hurting, and it would literally be the 50 million would probably be a drop in the bucket, but for them, it's about the precedent. They don't want to set that precedent, but I do believe that this will probably be settled relatively quickly. They don't want to drag this out, but it is going to cause this tension to start building between talent and the studios, and it's just not what you really want right now when you're struggling to get productions going. It's just not the kind of thing you really want.
Well, some of my thought is, and it's not a trend I think is going to turn away, but my favorite film studio for all of its creative ability is Netflix. I think they just really know how to, as he says sarcastically.
For those who don't know, that's sarcasm.
But Netflix, I think what drives me crazy when I'm watching those films is I honestly think like they've clearly commoditized everything. And some of what I feel is commoditized is just the actors and actresses that are in the film, because they're simply just choosing a name regardless of the conditions of the production quality and putting it out there, and they're churning this, I was going to use a bad word, these films out on a weekly basis to keep the
Yeah.
platform going.
Yeah.
And what we know is the value of the actor and actress is their visibility, the characters they play, and how well the last performance was to get their next performance. That's the way the marketplace works. So if Disney starts playing this game of like, no, 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 you're simply just a commodity. It doesn't matter where we distribute it. You don't get any back end points. There's no differentiator, regardless if the ticket buyers and the viewers are more likely to see one actor or actress over another.
Right.
That to say like it makes no difference to the payout, we the studio or the streaming service gets to keep the the proceeds of that. Like I think it's bogus. And I think that's
Hmm.
where SAG needs to step in and just start saying, no, you don't understand. We're leveraging our talent, no different than the directors are leveraging their talent, the writers are leveraging talent, and the studio's making money from it. And it's not
Hmm.
that there shouldn't be a risk reward factor. Obviously, a big part of entertainment always has losses to it. But we should recognize the wins, especially if you have a contract, especially if Disney has a contract. How many contracts does Disney come down on? They
Yeah.
have to be able to follow through it and recognize how that works and not just be a bully. I don't like the bully tactics. It's garbage.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think Netflix is one of those, I think we've talked about this before, but Netflix had the beauty of being this cash cow that was just, here's X million dollars, go off and make your movie. We'll see you in 3 months. And it's just, that's like a dream for a lot of people. It's like no middling studio exec telling me what to do, and no finance guy calling me or a physical production guy calling me telling me I'm way over budget, I got to cut this scene or figure out a way to cut back on the post for this visual effects. And I think that's they survived that for a while, and a lot of people were willing to make that trade-off by like getting paid a higher salary and for there to being no back end. There's no sense of what you're going to make in the back end. Now, with the new contract, and again, going back to the SAG election coming up, I think it's going to be interesting to see, like, they'll say, like, well, listen, if this meets your metric of 76 million downloads, we want a certain
Yeah.
bonus for that or something like that. And I could totally see that happening
Or
because
if you
that,
add new subscribers, give me a piece of the
yes,
new subscription base. Or if you
yeah,
retain those subscribers over a long period of time that came on board when I was there, I want
yeah,
to know who those people are
yeah,
and I want to be able to pay for them because
right,
there's data to
right,
start saying, hey, this
yeah.
is my fan. This fan came here to see me. And every time I
Mhm.
show up, they give you more
They
money. I
show
want a
up.
piece of the door.
I want
That's
a piece.
how the
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And I think you get the sense that there is an uneasiness growing within Netflix that usually, I mean, for the last few years, they've been sort of the confident, BMOC and sort of just throwing their weight around town. But over the course of the last few weeks, I've started seeing like a sense that they're not as confident as they once were, particularly on the film side. We had the news last week about, the new presidents being bumped up. So they have three. And then this past week, there was this really weird Variety article that came out about Scott Stuber. And it was almost, it was a little weird because it felt like a celebrity profile. It didn't feel like a studio exec. It was like the new world order, as if studio like Netflix is responsible for the new world. And there was this bizarre photo of him jumping off a riser. If he's some
yeah,
sort
it's
of,
like the Tom Cruise jumping on a couch moment. It's almost
yeah,
kind
it
of
was.
weird.
I was like, what is he doing? Like, why does he need to do this? He's like, and this is on top of a Wall Street Journal piece that ran last year about his day. Like, I go pick up my kids and then I go to the. I mean, it's like what. Like, I totally get that this is sort of the ego of Hollywood and how that operates, and you got to kind of look out for your own. And he wants to burnish his reputation. But on top of it, it just feels like to me, almost like this burgeoning crisis of confidence. Like they have to tell the town, no, we're still confident in film. We believe in it. We're behind it 100%, because I think the announcement that they were bumping those two people and the firing of those three marketing execs sort of has given this sense that, wait, maybe everything isn't copacetic at Netflix right now. And I know that they're not necessarily dumping cash on people anymore. They're giving notes now. It's becoming more of a traditional studio. And I think that is that was their advantage, and that's lessening. So now it's like they feel the need, or Scott Stuber in particular feels the need to go out and say, listen, I'm still here. We're still the new world order. We're still leading the revolution of the entertainment industry. Don't forget about us. It's just
And
very
I'll
odd
say
to
they're
me.
right. I mean, There is a new world order. I got that part. There was a
Yeah,
revolution, or there's a revolution. They are the leader in it. That's true. I
yeah.
think you're right in saying, like, why are they telling us that? Like, shouldn't they just be?
It's like you can
Shouldn't they
look
just
at
be
the evidence. It's
revolutionary? Do they?
obvious at this point.
Right. It's almost like they're telling the history in the middle of the story. Like, don't
Yeah.
just be revolutionary. Actually, step
Yes.
up. This deal with Spielberg. What is that deal? How does it play itself out? How about you tell me the results of it instead of like promoting that you made the deal with them? Like
Right. Right.
there is this dynamic that has shifted that for better or worse has happened. How about you make it for the better? And just
Right.
start talking about what are the changes and what are the
What are the
opportunities.
changes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking
Yeah.
we
And
changed, like, okay, we are
yeah,
here.
I think, and that's why I'm saying it's just an odd crisis of confidence that I'm just not used to seeing necessarily from Netflix. Because you're right. Why is it that every single media conglomerate has a streaming service now? It's because of Netflix.
Yeah.
Why are they dumping so much money on putting content on that and bending over backwards to create enough content to hold on to subscribers? It's because of Netflix. Why do people binge? Because of Netflix. I mean, there's so many things that have happened over the course of the last 5 to 10 years that are a result of Netflix that it seems a little bit almost like they have to feel like they have to say it. Like, we're still revolutionary, but at the same time, if you say it over and over again, I'm like, I don't believe it anymore.
Maybe they're telling
Like,
Wall Street something. Maybe it's not for
that's,
us in
yeah.
our viewing audience. There's like some other,
Well, I
companies
think
that
if it
have
if it was Wall Street, they would have gone a little broader. I think they would have gone for like a Wall Street Journal
well,
again,
it
or
wasn't Variety.
Forbes.
Well,
It was
yes.
Variety, but Variety is very much a town magazine. So the other thing they could potentially be trying to do is offset sort of the rumblings around town amongst studio executive talent. Like, oh, I don't want to go work in Orwellian Netflix where the people are going to rat each other out. Like, they've got to deal with that. But if you sit up there and say, who doesn't want to be a part of the revolution in the entertainment industry, then that's sort of the draw.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a part of it as well. Like, we have a crisis in terms of our brand amongst talent, and we need to fix that, not just in front of the camera talent, but behind the scenes, like
Right.
in
I guess if being
executives.
part of the revolution is you might be dragged out in the street and beaten by your co-revolutionaries.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
let me
You
let me
might end
do
up in the guillotine.
let
Who
me
wants
ask
to
this
join
question.
up with
Do I want to
that?
be what is this revolution again? Maybe I could just go to the
Do I
bully
want to
house.
get like, I'm not, I love what Robespierre is saying, but I know how the story ends, so I think that may potentially
Right.
pay into it a little bit as well, which is
I'll
which is
just
to me,
be
it's just fascinating. It's
better
really
off being
fascinating.
bullied by Disney than being beaten by my
Yes,
coworkers, maybe.
there you go.
Yeah, it is. It
That's
is very
definitely the choice.
fascinating. To me this idea of the revolution. Um, this is the transition that we've seen, right? So in our
Mhm.
lifetime, we saw the blockbuster transition,
Yeah.
or moving in and out of blockbusters. So that's what we know are post blockbuster in this now
Mhm.
streaming field.
Mhm.
Great. There's a lot of great opportunities. There's a huge kind of look forward into the future. But I'll just say, like, what it seems like, especially this highlights this in this article, is that the future is not being defined by future leaders. The future is being designed
Yes.
by current leaders, and
Mhm.
they're all they can do is talk about the comparison, much like we'll talk about the comparison. But where's the vision and opportunity of what the results of this revolution is? So if the
Yeah.
results are actors are commoditized, people don't get paid what they're supposed to, a pandemic can change all the rules because we're crying in our soup or whatever the thing is. Like it doesn't really play itself out of like that's not better results. Instead of
Mhm.
looking at hey, it's a worldwide distribution audience. There's stories that are not being heard that are more easily heard. I think the influence in the Oscars is obviously seen what there are films being accepted, best picture films being accepted, that in the old way, like we've never even seen the films. There was no way to
Yeah.
access those films, let alone recognize and be able to put them out for best picture. So there's some great, amazing things that are happening in this revolution, but I want some future leadership in there. I want somebody to step up and actually start, playing out
Yeah.
to be on the other side of this obvious revolution.
Yeah. It's you as you know, this is sort of like one of my biggest pet peeves about the business. We've had the same 30 people running this, or the same 10 people, 30, wish the same 10 people running the business for the last 30 years. And this past week we had news that Tom Rothman at Sony had been re-upped, and he's added the chairman or the CEO title to his role at the studio. And listen, I applaud Tom for all that he's done there. It's never easy to head up a studio, let alone a studio in the midst of a once in a lifetime pandemic when theaters are shut down. But he turned it around. It was a little bit of a mess post the email release scandal in the Amy Pascal era. And he turned it around, made it profitable, much like he did with Fox. Kudos to him. But what I would love to have seen with the announcement of his extension was he's planning to retire on X. Here, this so-and-so is taking on more responsibilities, and whoever that person may be, and just to anoint, sort of send that the next level, the next era is beginning. And there is going to be a new way of looking at things, and there is going to be a new production that's going to be, and I lost him. And there's
Tim. You went in and out there. Sorry. Try it again.
That's all right. So I would love to see a time when that sort of would happen, because I think it goes back to a talent issue. Because if you're going to try to recruit people into this industry to say take those jobs, because the reality is the industry it's a rough place to start. The assistant salaries are god awful. It's a long hours, much like a lot of other jobs. I mean, like you go work in investment banking, it's long hours, it's brutal, but you're also making $80,000 right off the gate. That's not what's happening in the industry.
Yeah.
And for a recruitment tool to know that listen, they're going to eventually die off. It's just nature. But a lot of what they're doing is just sort of, there's no leadership happening there. I mean, Bob Iger was there. He was a bit of a leader, in terms of buying up brands, but there's nobody really leading the industry through this pandemic.
I guess that's what I'm saying too. Like, who are the names that we're going to put in in this era of this transition? Yes. And if they're the same names that existed before this transition, it's not yet a transition. We're not taking advantage of the whole playing field. So I want if Wall Street's going to step into Hollywood, I want Wall Street to start telling Hollywood, hey, tell us about this future. Who are these people I'm investing in? How do I know that your plan has more legs than just, scooping all the profits in the moment?
I would agree with that, but I think a lot of the mentality of Wall Street is, what can you do for me now? And a lot of these guys and ladies have proven themselves throughout the course of their career that they can make money. And that's really what Wall Street cares about. They don't care about maybe they do. Obviously in the case of Disney, they cared who the successor was going to be.
Which is why Disney's winning in a way.
Right. But, at the same time, I think there is they're more intent to keep sequel with what they know, because they know it'll pay dividends in the end. But I think if the industry is going to survive, then there needs to be some revolutionary leadership. Like Irving Thalberg was 26 years old when he took over at Columbia Pictures. Zanuck was, I think, 30 when he took over at Fox. And it's like, to imagine that today is like mind-boggling. Like Emma Watts, who's at Paramount, I think is in her 50s. Sean Bailey at Disney's in his 50s. And that's sort of like the next gen. Scott Stuber's in his 50s, and he was vice chairman at Universal before that. So
that's good, because that means I have some hope. I have some possible.
Yeah, me too. Because I'm not exactly 26.
Yeah, right. They didn't. They haven't bypassed me.
Anyway, it just would be nice to sort of look at there be a sort of transition to try different things, and you're not going to get that from a leadership that's been doing it the same way for 30 years.
Well, or a leadership that has lived in on both sides of the technology, where there's a whole generation of filmmakers out there that have only lived in a digital age. They have to have a greater vision and understanding of what that's capable to be done on a platform.
Yes.
And giving them opportunity and letting them step up and lead. And that's where I just think there's so much opportunity in this moment. That's why I wanted to start this podcast, just to be able to point out, hey, here's where the changes are taking. Here's how to break through in Hollywood, and here's where Hollywood is breaking, right? That's what the title means. And I want people to recognize opportunities, but if we're all just being blocked by, Scott Stuber's jumping off the thing, or Tom Rothman who re-upping his contract again, like, really, folks, like, I would love to, I'm like, I guess what you said too, is like, I would love for that announcement to have been, what we're doing and what the transition's like.
Position will be like, what's
Yeah.
the next generation look like? And it's interesting. I did a talk not too long ago with the Greater Philadelphia Film Office and their young filmmakers program. And there was a screenwriter on there, because I gave sort of a big talk on how to market yourself and sort of some of the opportunities that this pandemic has brought forth that wouldn't have been a part of the industry even a year or 2 years ago. And one of them said, like, yeah, I think I'm just going to start calling agents and sending scripts and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what? No. Like that, you can't. I mean, listen, that's the old way of doing things,
That's
but it's still,
1970. Yeah.
that's 1970. But you say that, but it's still a big part of the interview. You can't get a script in front of a studio exec unless you're repped by an agent.
Of course.
And it's just and listen, I get it, legal reasons. We opened the show talking about legal complications and contracts. I understand that.
Yeah.
But how are we going to find the next Spielberg? How are we going to find the next Scorsese if we're just sticking with the same group of people over and over and over again? And trust me, if you're just relying on the studio execs who work in the studio, that's never going to happen. So
yeah, I do feel like there are, it too. You could define this generation's leading filmmakers and storytellers. It's very clear. We see them in movies often. They're writing, directing, making animated films. I mean, they're covering that body of people, but I don't hear their names being brought up, or that generation's names being brought up in the leadership of the studios. It's almost like that same movement that we have that is fitting for this time on the entertainment side is not necessarily matching the business side. And that's where, like, I think I don't know. I think you and I are just wanted to be heard of, like, there's more to it than just playing the Wall Street game or playing the game at the moment or the same old tactics. There's way too much opportunity in this new playing field. And if anybody can get Netflix to make a better film, it would be really, really great to have somebody at the front end of that deal.
Agreed. Yep, that would be nice.
But here's the promise: when there is a moment where Netflix film has met the criteria that all films should meet, I will be the first one to say it. Okay. I will give our advertising block away for free to that film.
It's on tape, Tim. It's on tape.
That's my promise. Netflix will not have to pay me for that advertising block that week. That's Lydia is our producer. Lydia, mark that moment, because we're gonna.
She'll mark it.
I will not be like Disney. I'll be true to my word.
Okay. That's nice. No more free tickets to Disney World for Tim. You're done, buddy.
I don't think
you're gonna be waiting in line for 3 hours from now on.
I don't think that's much of a threat. I gotta be honest. Well, thank you very much for kind of like gathering this together this week. For me, like, the insights that we get to see on a week by week basis that come from you and your friends really are the beginning of a conversation that people need to get a hold of and think about as they're putting their films together, gathering the crew together, getting the investors together. And I know that I know you sit in investor meetings all the time, and you're trying to figure out with these filmmakers, like, when is the right time to get investment? Are you ready for it? What's the story you need to tell? And have you even met the criteria that is required for an investor to put the film up, to put the money together? Because some investors, as we know, will just pay the money for prestige, but a lot of people want to know, like, will this keep on going? So those conversations have a lot of insight into what we talk about on a week by week basis. And I just think it's important for people to really be thinking about this. For us to strip away, we might be kind of snarky, but we want to strip away the stuff that is holding you back and getting you to think differently about opportunity. So as we beat things up, as much as it's genuine, it's also a little bit like we're pointing it at something so we can
I mean, so light the path forward to make it a lot easier. And with a lot of the conversations I have, it's very much like, well, this is all well and good, but I could have a Bible of stories of investors who are just like, let's go movie. I want to make a movie. And it's just a complete shit show from start to finish. And you really have to look at sort of some of the opportunities that this transformation has afforded us, and really be smart about it, and not just think that you can just go back to the way things used to be or do things the way they used to be, and still be a success. And you're right. That's one of the reasons why we do this.
I had a conversation this week, and you'd appreciate, because I think it's similar to a conversation I know that you've had in the past with some of your clients, which is
Mhm.
the a financier had called one of our production companies and wanted to do an animated series with them, and just they were basically saying, we have all the money, let's just spend the money now. No distribution, no understanding of really who's going to be sold to. It's kind of this: if you
Yeah.
build it, they'll become
They'll
mentality.
come.
And from the
Yes,
production
very
company
much so.
side, it's exactly what they do. They're like, sure, I mean, where the financing comes from, it's fine. They're an execution platform, really. But the thought of like, I swear I got to get Keith in the room with that guy so that when he spends some money, because he should, and he's doing some things in the right direction, where does it go? How do we know it has the right makeup? And this is the moment to edit it for the platform now before it's made, instead of editing it after it's been created and you sell it. The platform says, hey, go back and all that money you spent, throw it away and do a whole new re-edit. Um, so that the opportunity that these investors have to get their film seen, sure, yeah, put the money together, get it out there.
Right.
There's a
Right.
lot of viewing audience out there. These platforms are amazing to get that niche audience. Awesome opportunity. Should you talk to a strategist first? Absolutely, talk to a strategist first. And that's what we want to know. We want to know where those
Yeah.
strategies are, how they hit the road, and we want to know how this stuff that we talk about on a weekly basis has an impact on that, because it's a trend that you're hitting into, and these are real trends. I mean,
Mhm.
hopefully we're close to the front line of these trends, so that we're talking about something that's going to work itself out in a few weeks. But to know that what it works itself out really has an impact on you, the filmmaker. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, again, as I said just a few minutes ago, it's, people show up and just say dump the money and say go. It's like there's so much more involved to it in it than just that. Just getting the money to shoot the production, which is all well and good, yippee. But at the same time, there's a lot of other ancillary things that need to be thought about before you really just dive in. And those are conversations that I don't think are really had, particularly when you just get a director or a screenwriter and a producer who are just probably been working on this for 2.5, 3 years, or maybe their entire life, and just want to get it made, just want to do it. And it's like, that's great. I understand the passion behind that. But at the same time, there is a sort of strategic thought process that has to go on. Once you start shooting a movie, okay, great. What's sort of our plan to get it in front of distributors? Also, what's our marketing plan? Where are all these pieces coming in? How are we going to get the money back for the investors? And what about the talent? What do we have that we could potentially use from them to sort of glean this project through? There are a lot of those considerations that are never even talked about
yeah,
before you just get the money and go off and start
just start
scouting
shooting. Yeah.
locations. Yeah.
And I
And I
like to
think
think
of those,
of going beyond that, like what does it mean to you for your career? What's the
yeah,
next 3 films you're going to make because this one is done successfully?
right.
That's the value
Yeah.
you have. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. No, I mean, I think that's exactly right. It's where can the sort of the changes that have happened over the course of the last 18 months afford filmmakers the opportunities to really start thinking about, because there are so many places you can show content now, how we can, what's the process in terms of getting in front of those streamers and all the other nooks and crannies that have to be in the I's and T's and need to be dotted and crossed for the film to be really be accessed. And I don't think anyone really thinks beyond that. I had a conversation not too long ago with a screenwriter who's working on something that I think has a really cool idea, and he's building out a universe and a world. And I'm like, yes, see, that's great. You're thinking about the future. You're thinking about where this can go if it's a hit, if it's success. And it's a great way to look at it, because he's thinking about the next step. He's thinking 2 steps ahead. And that's very important
Always
if you really
important.
want to try to take advantage of this sort of new world order that we're walking into at the moment.
Yeah. That's why the compromise of just making a Netflix film that satisfies the deliverable at the moment. That's the minimum requirement edge that I'm always against, where you have an
Yeah.
opportunity to make a career for yourself and work with people that will advance it. Why are people making the most basic decisions to get it done instead of
Mm-hmm.
great decisions to make it worthwhile watching and worthwhile to
Yeah.
give you the next film? Because this will
Yep.
go away, right? Netflix is not just going to hand out cash. So the best will remain, and everyone else will have just been somebody they hired at one point. So as you're
Yeah.
fighting for your career, we want to get beyond those moments.
Yep.
Well, enjoy your time. When do you go back home?
Luckily I have a few more weeks. I'm up here for now until the 23rd. But we might extend it a few days just because it's nice to be up here, and Philadelphia is hot and stormy. So
So
we'll
I'm
take
gonna head to
advantage of
the
the
East
nice
Coast
weather.
on the last week of August. Maybe I'll land there
Oh,
first and drive my way down, and we could have those lobster
nice.
rolls we were gonna have.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here for a little bit. If you wanna check out Maine, I'll give you a little tour.
I love it. I want to say thank you to Lydia for always pulling this together. We appreciate all the work you do behind the scenes and making this happen. We could not do it without you, and Connor, who helps us with our research and supports us through this whole thing. We call him the Gatsby. So thank you, Gatsby, for being there and making sure that you're keeping us on track as well. Keith, to you and your friends and those secret conversations you're having, that we can sneak in whatever we sneak in here. There are little Easter
Yeah.
eggs that we drop in here all week long, all day long, that we been hearing
Yep.
all week. So I appreciate you
Mhm.
pulling that together. If you like
Of
what you hear,
course.
feel free to keep on listening right here, or subscribe to on this podcast platform you're listening to, or if you're watching us on YouTube. We're going to have a special little snippet now of some trailers, and it's a trailer edit we did. So, or not trailer edit, we did a review of a trailer edit that we both liked this week. So stay tuned on YouTube. And until next week, Keith, we will talk to you on Hollywood Breaks. Have a great week.
Sounds great, Tim. See you next week.